A ton of you guys have been asking for this one for a while, and I couldn't just leave you hanging. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down and going over how I color grade my videos. Before I dive in, I'd like to thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video. For those of you who aren't familiar with Skillshare, it's an online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes ranging from the business side of things to classes tailored to improving your skills as a filmmaker, all for under $10 a month. I never went to school for filmmaking, and if you're anything like me and enjoy self-teaching yourself new skills, then Skillshare is the perfect platform to do just that. And right now, the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the description will get 2 months of Skillshare Premium free. Alright, so there are a few things we should know and consider before we start coloring our footage. It all starts when you're shooting your video in camera. So a few things to take note of are, is my color profile as flat as possible? Am I shooting in a log profile? So on Sony, S-Log2 or Cine 4, Canon, CineStyle, or if you have a log profile elsewhere, use that too. Number 2, make sure your bitrate and codec is as high as possible. That way you're maximizing the amount of information you're getting in your video file. Oh, and last thing, turn off in-camera sharpening. That just doesn't look good. When you're capturing your footage, use tools like a histogram and false color to make sure you're exposing your shot correctly. Use those tools to expose your shot correctly and preserve details, whether it's in the highlights or the shadows. Now, once you have all that figured out, you're ready to move on and start the coloring process. Now, people always ask me if I use LUTs on my footage, and the answer to that would be yes. I have a few LUTs I've created myself from scratch, and I've fused a lot of different styles I've taken inspiration from over the years and merged it into my own. If you like the way my colors look and you'd like to support my work, then you can purchase my LUTs using the link in the description below. But I encourage you to develop your own style and create your own LUTs as well. So if you'd like to use my LUTs, use them as a guideline while you develop your own style. That's ultimately how you progress and what this is all about. So while I do have LUTs that I've created to keep my look consistent, a lot of it is done from scratch. You can't just slap on a LUT and expect things to be perfect. In this video, we're not really going to dive into the details and specifics, just how I color grade and what I do to achieve my look. If you're a beginner and would like to learn the basics, there are a bunch of resources online, and there's this one class on Skillshare I liked by Dan. And what she does is dive into the basics in Premiere Pro, teaching you how to train your eye and notice complementary colors, correct your footage and match shots to finally stylizing your grade. Once you think you've nailed down the basics or would like to try out Resolve, this class by professional colorist Fred Trevino gives a great overview of the software, and you'll be feeling comfortable working in it in no time. If you're a beginner, a great thing to do would be to watch one of those classes and then come back to this video after to find out how to achieve a styled look. Alright, so let's just jump into Resolve and I'll break down how I grade. Starting with our first clip here, the first thing I'm going to check for is to see if I'm exposed correctly. In the case of a clip being too dark, say it looks like this, then what I would do is bump up the ISO and make sure I'm starting with a nice flat image. What I'll also check for is white balance and tint, and in this case everything looks alright. So the first thing I'll do is go through my LUTs and see which one looks best, and I'll drop it over to change the hues of all the colors. I'll start off by bringing down the black point of the image, and you can already see that the image is starting to take shape. Next, what I'll do is bump up the shadows, usually around 25 to 30, and I'll bump up the highlights as well to give the image some pop. Now, it's looking a little bit too digital, so I'm going to bring down the gain, and while the gain targets the highlights, it also brings down the other parts of the image as well, and I just like the way it looks. Same thing with the gamma. Now, there are a few different tabs here in the color wheels, and there are the primary wheels, and also on the third tab, your log wheels, and they target things a little bit differently. You'll notice here that I'm losing a lot of detail in the shadows, and while bringing down the black point is a great way to add contrast to your image, in a lot of cases you'll lose detail in the shadows. So what I'll do is take my shadow log wheel, and I'll bring it up, and you'll notice as I do it, I get detail back. So I'll bring this up until I see a decent amount of detail, and if you look at the before and after of that adjustment, you'll see that I brought a little bit of detail back in the shadows. What I also like to do is add a little bit of a split toning effect here. So to the highlights, you can see if I move it over, it's a red tint, but I like getting a little bit of a warmer yellow tint in my highlights. And the same applies to my shadows here. I like a little bit of a teal bluish tint. And what I noticed from doing my highlight tint there is I don't like how warm this is right here, so I'm just going to scale it back a little bit. And that's looking pretty good. One thing I do that won't really affect this image too much, but I like to do, is mess with the white clipping here. So in the curves tab, you'll see this high, soft, and high. And what I'll do is I'll drag both those to the right to create a smoother highlight roll-off. Now I'll add a new node, and if you really want to get creative, you can open up the effects panel and type in glow. And when I mess with the shine threshold, this is the setting that tells me which parts of the image the glow will be applied to. And pretty much what I'm going to do here is just create a bit of a pop to the highlights and do a little bit more split toning. I'm going to turn the spread down all the way so I don't lose any quality. And I'm going to go with kind of the same color I did with my highlight split tone, a bit of a yellow-orange color. I'm going to change the composite type from add to screen, and I'm going to turn the blending all the way down. So now there's no glow applied, but if I scale the blending up a little bit, you'll see I'm getting a little bit of a warmer glow there, and I might even turn up the brightness here as well. Now the image is looking a bit too warm, so I'm going to add another glow, but this time I'm going to apply it to the entire image. I'm going to colorize it and make it that blue color I like. Change it to screen, turn up the brightness all the way, and with the blend mode, I'm just going to add it just like that. And there you go, that's pretty much this first image graded. What you can do is add another node to the end, and if there's any noise that came into the image, you can add a little bit of temporal noise reduction. I wouldn't go any higher than 5 on images where you can't really see any noise. Then on the very last node, I'm going to add a little bit of sharpening here. Go to the sharpening panel, and you can see if I really overdo it, it really sharpens the image. But I'll put it to about 0.48. And there you go, that's that first image right there. And here's a little bit of a before and after. Now with the second image here, we're gonna go through pretty much the same process. I'm gonna see if I like the way this image is exposed, and I think it's exposed pretty well. So what I'll do is cycle through my LUTs and see which one looks the best. All the other ones are making it a little bit too blue, and I like this second one here. So I'll drag and drop it over, and I'll start by bringing down the black point of the image. After I've done that, I'll drag and raise shadows, and you'll notice we're losing a little bit of highlight detail here. So I'll do the same thing, and I'll make my highlight roll off a little bit smoother. And in this highlight log panel here, I'll bring it down so I regain that detail in the highlights. Now I wanna create a little bit more contrast, so I'm gonna press Shift S to create a node before this one, and I'm going to bump up the shadows and midtones a little bit. And now I'm going to go back to that second node and create another node after it by pressing Alt S, and I'm going to bring down the black point of the image again. Now our shadow roll off isn't too smooth, so I'm going to go to the shadow log wheel and just bring it up slightly to bring back some of that detail. Add that little bit of a teal tint I like, and on the highlights as well, push it orange a little bit. And there you have it. There's that image already starting to take shape. And you can do the same thing we did on the other image. If there's any noise that's been introduced, add a little bit of noise reduction, or if there's none of that, just sharpen it slightly, and there you go. Here's a little bit of a before and after, and I think it came together quite nicely. I hope you guys were able to take something away from this and are feeling a little more confident now in the whole grading process. It took me a while to develop my style, so if it doesn't come to you right away, don't be discouraged, and remember, practice makes perfect. If you end up using my LUTs, reach out to me on Instagram. I'd love to see how they look on some of your footage. Thank you as always for your support, and I'll leave you guys with some speed grades. Take care.